Good evening. Welcome to the board meeting for Monday, December the 10th. All aldermen are present and accounted for. We thank those that are here in attendance this evening. This evening, our invocation will be led by Reynold Douglas. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Alderman John Barziza. Please rise.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Gracious, eternal God, our Father, we thank you again for this day, and we thank you for the opportunity to come before your throne of grace and mercy and tell you thank you. We ask, Lord, that you would bless those during this holiday season, those that have and those that have not. We know that you're able, and we trust that you will. We ask now that you would be a part of this meeting, be a part of the decisions and the dialogue, that it go in a way that you be glorified. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Item 4 on the agenda is setting of the agenda this evening. The agenda was printed and presented to the public during executive session. The board met at 5:30, and at that time there were no adjustments made to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented to the public? Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
The agenda is set for this evening. Brings us to item 5, the approval of the minutes from the November 26th meeting. In executive session, there were no modifications. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Move to approve.
Is a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barziza?
Yes.
Minutes for the 26th have been approved. Brings us to item 6 on the agenda. We have 2 special recognition items. Both of them involve public education. The first will be the Teacher of the Month, followed by the Youth Excellence Award. Vice Mayor Gibson will lead us in those presentations. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could ask Chairman Mindy Fisher of the Education Commission, as well as Commission members Barb Boyer, Steve Chandler, and Manjeet Kaur to come forward, and as well as Mr. Jason Middlecoff with Houston Middle School. Well, we are going to congratulate him as being the December 2018 Teacher of the Month Award, and we will make certain that he does get his award. Thank you very much, Commission members. Thank you. We do. Thank you very much. If I could ask Ms. Brooke Foreman to come forward. I don't see Brooke either.
God.
And so, thank you, folks.
We'll make those, get those honors and presentations to those particular individuals. Yeah, they are probably studying right now, preparing lesson plans. It brings us to item 7 on the agenda this evening, Alderman Liaison Reports. We go from position 1 through 5. Alderman Barziza.
Thank you. Though we didn't have a quorum last week at the Economic Development Commission meeting, we did discuss several things. We have several openings of new businesses. Nukes has begun training. Rock and Soul Sushi, can't say it tonight, is open for business now, I believe. Stacks is open for sure. Let It Fly and BurgerFi are both on the books as opening soon. Construction for the hotel at Trevere has been started again with Montgomery Martin as the contractor. The original contractor, Omni, filed for bankruptcy. J.P. Morgan has leased part of the first floor at the MAA building and will move in there next summer. First Bank will also move into the MAA building. Campbell Clinic construction has started, as everybody has seen, and they opened a small section of their lot for valet parking for the West Cancer Clinic. the 230 lot single, there's a 230 lot single family project north of Winchester. Goodwin Farms is going through the approval process and should be moving right along over the next several months. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Library Board reported that 2018 has been their most generous year to date. And just today, Daniel Page, our library director, informed me that the Friends of the Library group provided $9,000 for the Children's Department, which will help them continue the exceptional programming that we've come to expect. And so, Daniel, well done there. The Beautification Commission, I had over 90 entries for the holiday lighting contest. The commission will meet tomorrow evening, and the winners will be posted on the city's website with an interactive map. So please make certain that you do a drive about the city to see the beautiful lights. That's my report, sir.
Thank you. Alderman Massey.
Mayor, I don't have a report, but I would like to say thank you to the Public Safety Education Commission for their work on the Christmas float and for the members who participated. We didn't have a meeting last time, but the members gathered and decorated the float, so thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Owens.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. The Planning Commission met on December 4th and approved a revised site plan for Moondance Restaurant, which is located in the Thornwood development. And the DRC, or Design Review Commission, met on November 27th and approved signage for Stack's Pancake House, Alderman Barzizza mentioned, Five Below, as well as storefront modifications for the new Burger Fi restaurant at the former Bank of Bartlett location.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Yonda.
No report. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Takes us to item 8 on the agenda this evening, citizens to be heard. We have several citizens to be heard forms have been filled out. Let me read into the record the rules and requirements for citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. Again, we have several folks. When I announce your name, please come forward to either podium. Make sure the green light is on and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Jeff Brown, please come forward.
I'm Dr. Jeff Brown with 1765 Enclave Green Road. I'd just like to take this moment to thank all of you guys for serving in your positions, Mayor, all the Aldermen. I'd like to particularly thank Alderman Barzizza for the service over the last 4 years as he's exiting. Thank you for your service, a true leader in the community. Sad to see him go, but glad to see Mr. Sanders, who will also serve in the same capacity. So thank you all. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next speaker will be Marlene Strube. If you could come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Marlene Strube, 7642 Foster Ridge in Germantown for a long time now. I want to thank all of you for your time and attention and attendance here every meeting and so many commission meetings you go to, so many community events you go to. I want to thank those of you who listen to us and respond to us in a kind manner. And I especially want to thank Mr. Barzizza, Alderman Barzizza. I did not know him until he became alderman. And I will say he is a man of integrity, and I'm very sad to see him leave. But I am thankful that we do have Mr. Sanders coming along, and I just hope that all of you will continue to, it's on. I just hope all of you will continue to listen to the citizens thoughtfully and respond thoughtfully. And I hope all of you have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Ms. Strube. Next speaker will be Sarah Freeman. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Sarah Freeman, 7684 Appahon Lane. I rise to thank quite gratefully. John Barziza for his years of service as a Germantown alderman. My husband, Herschel, and I had the privilege of meeting John when he was first running 4 years ago. And like Marlene, we did not know John until we had that experience. I also met his lovely wife, Wanda, and they both proved to be just very, very special people. When John won, many of us who were concerned about the integrity of our city government found a devoted ally. Someday the history of the years, these last 4 years, about Germantown government will be written. Since I'm a Southern historian, there's a good chance I'll be writing a good deal of that. And John's fight for good government and his role as a voice for the embattled underdogs will long be remembered. I especially appreciate his tremendous courage in calling for a recount in the recent mayoral election. This was an election with so numerous, odd, and unprecedented anomalies that the citizens truly deserve, the city deserves, a closer look at the election system, the process, and deserve a recount. The citizens, the city, deserves to have confidence in the election. Who among us could say that they are not in favor of a fair vote and a fair count? I think that is something that surely we could all agree upon. So thank you again, John. I know that this is a tremendous, it takes a great deal of heart and strength and courage to do what you've done for the city and what you'll continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Freeman. Next speaker will be Herschel Freeman. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Herschel Freeman, 7684 Appahan Lane, Germantown. It would have been a lot easier to go before Sarah. This is totally unfair. Just want to say thank you, John. You have not been afraid to hold public officials accountable when more investigation was warranted, including the Shelby County Election Commission. I salute you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Next speaker, Michael Stoll. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Michael Stoll, 2546 Regents Walk, 38138. I also want to ditto all the thanks to the board members, but I also want to thank the city for all the great services that are performed, whether it be our police, our fire, our ambulance, the great public works with our water, sewer, and roads, and our outstanding parks department. And generally, the city, as a rule, provides great fiscal conservatism. We're fiscally responsible. But I am concerned tonight about the one area, and that's the GPAC Grove outdoor venue. It is to provide entertainment to me, and I generally pay for my own entertainment, and I'm concerned about the significant increase in the budget. It's gone from what was to be considered a modest outdoor venue to a $4 million budget 6 months ago to now over $5 million budget, a 25% increase. Now, again, that's for our cultural entertainment. And I think it's great that government does have a hand in cultural entertainment, but we're not the Medicis providing for Michelangelo here, and we're not the King of Austria providing Mozart to write music. This is an outdoor venue that will have food trucks that will serve overpriced food on cardboard trays. And this venue will probably have less use because of the outdoor nature. It won't even have wall. It would be a non-building. It will probably have less days of use because of the weather. So it's one that concerns me that this budget has gone up so much for this. I almost have a feeling that we're rushing this project just to get it in place by September of next year. Now, again, this was approved by the board last June, and now 6 months later, we're already looking at 25% more. And that's before they've even put one shovel in the ground, and we've already had the significant increase for the bad dirt just on the fire truck turnaround. So I'm not sure how much reserve we have for bad dirt just on digging that small area up. I ask if you would take a step back, take a deep breath, and consider, are we rushing this just a little bit? The one area that I'm proud of is the park system, and my favorite part about it is my indoor park. And my indoor park is the athletic club. And as a taxpayer, I'm still charged a fee for that indoor park, and it's self-sustaining. So you may want to take a look at how the municipal school system pays for the additional overages, or look at debt funding, but take a step back and consider whether we're not rushing this too much. Oh, and my wife and I volunteer as ushers at the GPAC. Hopefully I won't get fired for speaking up.
It's hard to fire people that work for free. That concludes citizens to be heard for this evening. We appreciate all the comments that came forward. That takes us to the consent agenda this evening. The consent agenda was thoroughly reviewed in executive session. I will highlight those items quickly. Item 9A, Agreement Wireless Transmission Facility, Utility Easement, Crown Castle GT Company, LLC. Item 9B, Certificate of Compliance, VOMFAS, located at 2055 West Street, Suite 12. Item C, Contract Amendment Number 1, Landscape Management and Mowing Services. Item D, Purchase Hazmat ID. Item E, Purchase Mobile Vision In-Car Video Systems. Item F, Reimbursement Payment Number 4, Germantown Municipal School District School Security Improvements. Item G, TDOT Contract Amendment Number 2, Safe Routes to School Phase 1. Item H, TDOT Contract Amendment Number 2, Safe Routes to School Phase 2. Item I, Supplement Number 2, Safe Routes to School Phases 1 and 2. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Move to approve. Second it.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved. We move to the regular agenda this evening. Item 10, Contract GPAC Grove Outdoor Venue. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. It's great to have all this time. Right. I got it. Before we go into the details of the agenda, I just want to share that these are in my 14 years. Within GPAC's 24 years, this is, I think, the most exciting endeavor the organization has gone through, and I think that this board of directors and this staff is the strongest that it's had in those 24 years. I also want to thank the multiple departments that helped the performing arts guy figure out how we could do this in this time frame, at this space. I was overwhelmed by the support by economic development, by police and fire, by administration, by procurement, by general services and public works. This is truly a multi-departmental function in terms of their participation, and I just wanted to openly thank them. You know, the Germantown Forward 2030 came about sort of at the onset of this idea when it started to become a reality. And that quality of life strategic objective, exceptional gathering places encourage engagement among residents and visitors. I think that this project is the first significant move in that long-term plan. And we heard those words from that citizen-based group and rode that all the way through this project until today. So let me dig into this detailed agenda as best I can. You've had the packet before you, and what we're here to do is, the purpose is to consider approval of the construction contract with Grinder Tabor, and to approve budget adjustment 1929, and to consider the professional services supplement with Archimania for additional design services that were necessary and work that was done, and as well as construction administration, which was part of their overall proposal, and to accept the first transfer of funds from the Germantown Performing Arts Center. Chief will show some slides. I want to just go through the project, a couple of visuals just to give you a sense. This is the entryway This is the First Tennessee Foundation Plaza. It is a covered canopy. Residents and visitors will enter from 2 entrances, as well as from inside of GPAC onto this hard surface. There will be a food and beverage area, a recognition wall of all the contributors in perpetuity, as well as an exterior box office that will be managed by our current box office team. Guests and residences will transition to the Grove, which is in a park-like setting and a casual atmosphere, onto what has been named the True Green Lawn. We'll go next, Chief. Oh, I got my mouse, don't I? This is a rendering on the general look and feel of the project, of the stage environment. This is a setup where a live concert is occurring. You can see we've kept that park-like setting. This venue is different in its experience of the indoor venue. This is a community gathering space for family and friends. This is something that we know our patrons and neighbors have asked us to create more of. There will be a hard surface in the front where people could set up some chairs that we will supply or they can bring. And this is for what we call a live band setup. This is a beautiful venue. It is large enough to hold an orchestra. It is large enough to hold a dance company. It is large enough to hold theater as well as opera. This is an outdoor reflection of our indoor space. Oh, how do I do this? Can you go to previous? This is this demonstrates what we call the video wall. There will be a 32-foot wide high-definition video wall that will live on the upstage wall, which is the back of the stage, and it will move forward. This is a very innovative part of the project. From our research shows we are the 3rd entity in the country, second to San Antonio and Miami, that has such a thing that is connected to an indoor performance space. This demonstrates the ability to simulcast a concert that's inside the Performing Arts Center to outside. There are 7 more in the works in the United States, including the famed Kennedy Center as part of their $130+ million renovation. This will set us apart from any venue in the region and put us into a realm which I think Germantown can be proud. When I came here 6 years ago and Patrick instilled in us excellence every day, taking this project to the next level is an example of that excellence. We continue on through your agenda. You have to know that in the FY19 budget, $3.2 million was budgeted for construction and $800,000 was to be handled by the GPAC nonprofit. And the nonprofit, with guidance and support from city officials, has elected to purchase this video wall through a company called Daktronics, which is the nation's leading provider of that. It is an American-made product. The service excellence is very, very high, and you know them from most arenas, including the FedEx Forums, Jumbotron, or Video Experience, as well as Nolan Production Group, which has been under contract with us for 4 years now in terms of supplying our audio and video equipment. We outsourced that in lieu of city staff, and that relationship has been outstanding, and we will acquire our audio equipment and our lighting equipment that will live outside in the Grove for most of the year through them. So let me move forward into the fire truck turnaround. And that subject matter, the fire truck turnaround, was a necessity as the project began to develop. We worked with police and fire and administration, general service and public works, and the Great Hall and the athletic club to determine that the fire trucks were not going to be able to travel around through the Grove, so we needed to turn them around behind GPAC. It's done a couple of things for what we internally call the G complex, the Great Hall and the athletic club. That will allow for a lot more security on the backs, on the rear area, that sort of back parking lot that supports those entities, for shipments to be able to turn around in that area, and for, of course, the fire trucks to turn around. So we carefully studied that for several months and elected that the best thing to do was to construct that necessary fire truck turnaround, because that's what Fire Marshal Jody said we had to do, and you have to listen to fire marshals. So that added to the project, which was a necessity. So moving on out of background into discussion, I mentioned to you the immense support that we've had from contributors. The support from the nonprofit community and the corporate community, not just in Germantown, but in the entire county, is really unprecedented. What does that mean? That means that FedEx Corporation, the Assisi Foundation, the Plow Foundation, True Green, Methodist, First Tennessee, and the GPAC board, the contribution levels for each of those exceed $100,000. FedEx for $250,000. Assisi Foundation at $250,000. To have those entities come into the city of Germantown with that level of support is definitely unprecedented at GPAC. And we hope that that will springboard them to support the other nonprofits in the Germantown area as Germantown continues to grow as a major player in this market. So the projects came in. They were high on the construction side. What we were learning from experts within our system, as well as people that we would talk to, the construction pricing in this market and nationwide is up 30 to 35%. That momentum continued, and those pricing came in. The bids were all in line. We're very pleased that Grinder Tabor, which is a premier general contractor in this market, came in at the lowest bid, and we're very pleased to be able to move forward with them with your approval. So in terms of the professional services supplement, Archimania, it was required for additional design services due to desires from the state fire marshal that we had to come into play, and as well as part of their contract, they will serve as a support on project management. And then a couple of more add-ons that are tallied up in your recap of expenses is the FF&E. That's for furniture in the plaza, and as well as box office equipment. And there you have, right now, the pricing for the AV and the video wall, which was budgeted $800, is come in at $889. We've already gotten one vendor to agree to lower that number. If that number lowers, then we will come back with the city and sort of settle on that savings and bring that back into the project, and we'll work with BNP on how to recognize that savings. So there you have at the bottom of page 2 the recap of all the expenses totaling $5,056. And in terms of the first transfer, the transfer of the funds from GPAC, the nonprofit, so we have the bulk of our funding has been received in terms of the 2.5. We have several contributors, corporate contributors that will give over time, and we have a line of credit to help us pay that in advance. We will transfer to the city before June 10th of 2020 in the first payment of $400,000, in the second, which is the end of this fiscal year, which BNP had requested, that $1,113,000. And then that last $125,000 into FY20 at the conclusion of the project. Before we open the floor to questions, I have two members that would like to address the board, members of our board of directors who also represent some of our contributors. So first we'll have Ms. Kathy Simonetti.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. My name is Kathy Simonetti. Paul is, as I agree with Paul, Paul is right. This has been one of the most fun, amazing projects to work on that I've ever worked with. And I've been in not-for-profit on both the employee staff side and a volunteer side. And it's been great fun to raise money for. It's been exciting to talk about. It's always met with lots of enthusiasm, and we're really looking forward to see it to fruition. As I said, I'm on the GPAC board. I was the former board chair. I served for a couple of years, so I've been in the gears of this project for a little while. I'm also a Germantown resident. I bought a house so I could ride my bike here and walk if I'm really feeling frisky. I also work here in Germantown. I'm part of the First Tennessee Private Wealth Team. And as Paul mentioned, not only is this project important, I think, as not just a music venue that's going to be used a few times a year, but it really is a community gathering place that's going to be used. I can see it being used year-round because our weather is so mild that I can see this as something that people, where our neighbors will gather and get to know one another in a very casual environment. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's a very unique and amazing quality of life amenity that our community will like. But more importantly, as he mentioned, I think our corporate community really believes in this project too. I know my company does, I know Matt's company does, and he mentioned some other significant headquarters here that have invested in Germantown, because Germantown is important to this community and to the companies in our area. So thank you for supporting it.
Mr. Mayor, Board, good evening. I come to you tonight wearing a number of different hats. I'm a citizen of Germantown. I'm the Chief Prosecutor for the City of Germantown. I'm a board member of the GPAC. I'm an individual donor of the GPAC. And I'm an attorney at FedEx who worked closely within our internal global citizenship group in order to secure this gift, substantial gift on behalf of the GPAC Grove project. This is a significant project for all of the different hats I'm wearing tonight. I think this is a game changer for our city. I think it's a game changer for our regional arts, for our place in the arts community. I think it's a game changer for young families looking for outdoor entertainment options here in Germantown. And I think it's a type of attraction that really connects the dots with what's going on over at Thornwood for the new residents there, the new tenants, and the new businesses and restaurants that are springing up and taking place across the street. So without speaking on behalf of FedEx, I do know that FedEx, by my participation in the process, studies these things very closely. They are inundated with these types of requests, and that they very judiciously grant sponsorship dollars and things like naming rights only in projects that they believe in. So as Kathy said, the fact that our corporate community has come out in force for this project, I think is a stamp of approval and a show of faith in what we're trying to do at the GPAC board. From my perspective on the GPAC board, I wanted to share that myself and fellow board members have the utmost faith and confidence in Paul Chandler as our steward, as our visionary, as our leader. We believe fully that he will execute this project with the highest amount of competency and at all times in the Germantown way. While I'm not a Southern historian, I know that those of us involved in this project are going to be very proud of this project, and I could not be in greater support of it, and thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you, Matt and Kathy. In conclusion, I wanted to add about in the business of what we do and where this project, what this project can do for the performing arts in this market. We have become very successful on the indoor space. We are at a point where we are financially secure and we are ready to grow. The indoor space is full at its capacity, and it brings in a certain citizen, one who has been brought up in the performing arts world and comes into our space, buys a ticket or comes to a free education program. There are countless others that we're aware of, that we observed and we spoke to, that think that maybe that's not for me. Well, this gets them to our front door, and this invites them into our system, and our system is ticket revenue and contribution revenue, which we feel will strengthen the overall health of the nonprofit. And in conclusion, this video wall mechanism is designed to build audiences not only for GPAC, but all of its users. Those users are Iris Orchestra, Opera Memphis, Memphis Symphony Orchestra, Ballet Memphis, New Ballet Ensemble, Collage Dance Ensemble. So to be able to go to GPAC and go into the Grove at a low to no dollar ticket and expose your family or your friend or your young person to a performing arts experience in a casual setting, then opens up the door to, I want to go inside and get fully engaged. And it is that element of this project that I think we will look back in years to come and say that we were trendsetters in the market in this region, and if not in this country. So I will open up the floor, Mayor and Board, to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Let's get a motion on the table. Is there a motion to approve a construction contract with Grinder, Tabor, and Grinder Incorporated for the established unit pricing, the base bid, and the alternates 1, 2, and 3 in the amount of $3,949,347.54 for the construction of the Germantown Performing Arts Center Grove project, to approve budget adjustment number 19-29 in the amount of $528,052.47, to approve professional services supplement number 2 with Archimania in the amount of $91,871, for additional design services and construction administrative services, and to accept $400,000 from the Germantown Performing Arts Center. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got several different questions. First of all, Mr. Chandler, fixed seating, how much fixed seating will there be? That will be permanently affixed to the ground?
None.
None. So it'll be basically just purely people bring their blankets or what have you, and
yes, Alderman, we have the invitation to bring your own seat, your own folding chair, your own camp chair, your own blanket. The hard surface in the front area welcomes seating for us to bring in. You know, we have 300 seats that we use on the indoor space, as well as tables. So that area up front, which is a hard surface, we can add what's called theater seating, which is seating in a row, or table seating in the front, depending on the venue. And then the patio in the FF&E portion will be cafe tables, chairs, and then the bar area will have stools.
I ask these questions because they were brought up before in an original vote, but just kind of to remind the people. Next question is in regards to events that, are you already planning, are you already trying to book events after the facility is completed? Let's say if it has a completion date of September of next year, are you already looking into booking events?
It's a good question. The indoor space plans events 12 to 18 to sometimes 24 months in advance. The outdoor space will not be designed in that way. It's a different type of buying structure. This project should be 10 to 12 months. That puts us in January. So the opening will be the spring of 20. So we won't start, we'll start to, we have overall budgets for what we want to spend on talent, but we won't buy that until the fall of 2019. And we intend to roll out the venue slowly. We want to get a really good handle on the environment and the customer experience and parking and ingress and egress and the neighborhood. So you can expect us to, whereas we might start with a little fanfare for one show, but we're going to kind of grow slowly into it and find its way.
Do you see yourself, do you see this facility as a bit of a small competitor of sorts to the Botanic Gardens?
A little bit more like the Levitt Shell than the Botanic Garden. Yeah. The Botanic Garden,
it's massive.
Yeah, it's massive. It holds 7,000 to 8,000. Talent budgets is over 150,000 to 200,000.
Now, having been to both the Pops as well as the Beach Boys, right, at the Horseshoe Arena, right, and we had a good number of people in attendance. Will we be able to handle events of that size? In this,
so our estimations on sort of standing experience is 1,200. so seated, that number is going to drop. And again, we're going to grow slowly. So for the certain methodical events, we'll say, let's let 400 people in here and see what that feels like. Let's let 500 and see what that feels like. But we can't exceed 1,200 in terms of the math that Archimania has done for us. We may have an event that lasts over time throughout a day to where people can kind of come and go. But we won't be at that size.
And security, there'll be a fence completely around the area.
We're reworking how we're going to handle the perimeter, but yes, we'll have a perimeter that we can manage and secure. And most recently, we decided that it would be wise to look into sort of bollards to make sure we don't have any vehicles that come.
And people will be able to lease it as they do GPAC.
Yes, it will be. We've got our ear, sort of our eye on a couple of our primary users on the inside, but we'd kind of like to run this ourselves a bit and figure it out before we open it up to an outside user who won't always be aware of the environment outside of the Grove. We want to make sure that the impact on our surrounding community is
And then one last thing
managed.
in response to comments that have been made to me in regards to neighbors. Just want to remind you, and I know you've talked with many of the neighbors in the area, that when there are events, that the neighbors be cognizant of what's going to happen well in advance, to be expecting the music or the, what have you, the movie, what have you. So I just want you to be sure that you remember those
Yes,
people
sir.
are close by.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman.
Vice Mayor Gibson.
Just a quick thought, and I know Ms. Simonetti and Mr. Price are here. Just wanted to thank, I know the original goal was $2 million for the GPAC board to match. Y'all went just over, just under 500,000, correct?
Yeah,
As far as 2 million plus 500.
2,475,000.
There you go.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think that does show the support both from the corporate and from private citizens that this is something that is very much sought after, looked forward to, and I'll be in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Yonda? Oh, I thought you'd raised your hand. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Alderman Massey?
So, Mr. Chandler, when we talked in the executive session, we kind of went over some of the expenses that the city of Germantown currently pays for. Right now, it's estimated that the operational costs that are funded out of the general fund are about $1 million. You said that we're going to have additional costs associated with the Grove, and some of those costs are the 2 employees at a cost of $80,000. And then you said you have not estimated additional cost over and beyond that $80,000, but you anticipate that there will be some additional costs. Is that correct?
We have some early estimations of that. It's not with me. I'd be happy to provide that to you. They're very preliminary. We got some general estimates from General Services on what utilities might be. We're thankful we don't have to air condition it or heat it. So we're just talking about sort of running power to it. The general maintenance and upkeep should be minimal. Public Works has spoke with us. We will likely, the Grove will likely seek support from True Green and an outside provider to kind of manage those grounds. It's sort of a different scope of work that Public Works does in-house. So that could be on the nonprofit management expense side. But yes, you're correct. So those 2 employees, one as a fundraiser and the other one in the facility management side, and the rest of the team will either be existing or through our volunteer corps of over 128, and as well as just independent contractors. And we'll of course continue to seek counsel from GPD as it relates to security.
Can you just give me an estimate of what you think the other costs would be? And it could be a range. It could be $100,000 to $500,000 if you want. If it's $80,000, and I'm not going to hold you to it. I know you're working on that.
Yeah, I think that the utility bill on the interior facility is about 80,000. That's water, well, it's utilities, so it's water, power, all the HVAC. So it would be less than that number for sure, in terms of not heating and cooling the facility.
So you mentioned True Green is going to handle the lawn services, is that correct? You may have to pay them for those services.
We'll work with them on how the lawn will be managed. They have their teams, their people that go out. We haven't gone that far with them. They've expressed interest. Their first contribution to us was, I believe, $125,000, $150,000 straight contribution to the construction of the project.
Now, with True Greens and some of the other corporations, when they gave money, did they all get naming rights?
Some, no. Some elected to choose naming rights, True Green and First Tennessee Foundation. FedEx elected just to make the contribution, as did Methodist, Germantown, and the other one, and of course the foundations, the CCM Plow, they don't, that's not their model.
At one time, there were talks of us that, for example, naming, I think, the screen FedEx, and they were going to have their logo on the screen. Is that still something that we're doing?
No, they just elected just to make the gift.
And will any of our corporate donors or the members of the GPAC have first rights to any of the tickets, or will it just be first come, first serve?
Oh gosh, our corporations. I mean, we have a subscriber system on the interior space that, on occasion, well, it allows subscribers to renew or purchase tickets in advance of general public. Each corporation, to your question, each corporation has a different contract based on what their needs are. Some of them say, we want more tickets for our customers or our employees, and some just say, may we use the facility at no charge for 1 or 2 times. They all vary.
So can you give us an idea of how much of the proceeds from the ticket sales or the rental revenue from GPAC would go back to the city of Germantown? Will it all be contained within GPAC, or is any of that money going to actually go back into, for example, the general fund?
Rental of the Grove?
Or in ticket revenue?
So ticket revenue and rental of the Grove goes towards the nonprofit, which is overseen by the board of directors. So
I'm sorry, Paul, but that's the exact same model we follow with the GPAC operations itself. The city provides the overhead, the foundation's charged in fundraising with helping to underwrite those costs, but any additional dollars that come from that go back into the GPAC Foundation, and we'll use the same model that we have in place with the 854-seat venue, and we will apply that to the outdoor space.
So, Mr. Chandler, one of the things that I've been asked, is as taxpayers, are we going to be able to recover any of these costs for the $2 million? And I think the answer is no. I live in a neighborhood within a few hundred yards of GPAC, and I appreciate that the corporations in Memphis and in Germantown want this project, but you gotta keep in mind there are also a lot of neighbors, young and old, that have lived in this neighborhood for decades, and they're not all on board with this project. I mean, you're looking at additional traffic, you're looking at additional noise. We just voted to downzone the Cordova Triangle because of concerns over traffic. One of the reasons that was cited was this very project. Well, a lot of that was considered on behalf of the residents of Neshoba North. Well, there's a lot of residents in Neshoba South that are going to be directly impacted by the traffic that's going to be generated from the Grove project, as well as the noise. And so they talked to me because I'm their neighbor, frankly. And so while you may not hear from them, I do. I know the neighbors contacted some of the other aldermen as well. But in light of that, you know, they're wanting to know why they're being asked to pay for a project, frankly, that they don't want and they think will be detrimental to their neighborhood. So do you want to answer that question for them? You know, how are the people who may never go to any of these concerts going to benefit from it, and how are we as a city going to recover the $2 million that we're spending in their tax money?
I can recall previous executive directors in this facility and others who easily state the number of people who come and then go out and buy gas and spend time in restaurants contributes to sales tax revenue. You know, there's some of that's in that answer, but I don't want to rely on that. It's an immeasurable amount. I think Germantown overall is growing in a way on the restaurant scene and in phenomenal ways, as even reported today. I do know that we have a significant impact on restaurants near the facility each time there is a large event. We don't measure that. One of the beautiful things about what Germantown has done over the last 24 years, and in an answer to your question, is to create an amenity that other cities don't have that is commonly affiliated, but not always, with a university, which is a cultural center or an entertainment complex for those who choose to elect to have that, to add that spice to their general life. And we can invite everybody to come, and we can create all sorts of opportunities for them to come for expensive experiences to free experiences. But we can't strong arm them all to come. But I can assure you that GPAC and then the Grove will continue to provide a cultural amenity to a city that, if it didn't exist, wouldn't have one at that scale.
If I could add to that.
That's the way I could answer that.
A number of we're talking about fundamental quality of life issues in our community, where we've issued tax bonds supported by the residents of the city of Germantown. I can go back to 1988 when, at that time, the Germantown Center was built. It was a membership-driven facility. Not all of the residents who paid taxes to retire that 20-year bond have stepped foot in the Germantown Athletic Club, now the Germantown Athletic Club, but it is an amazing amenity in our community. The same can be said for the library. The library was approximately a $5 million bond issue in 1994. Not everybody takes advantage of our wonderful library, but it's there and it's amenity, and you can tell people we are building things, making conscious decisions to add to the quality of life. GPAC is the same thing. When that facility was built, it was built with general obligation bonds and retired by the citizens of this community. Not everybody who lives in the city of Germantown may have stepped foot. I wish they would in the Germantown Performing Arts Center, but it's the quality of life that separates Germantown from other communities. And those decisions aren't made, you know, with Mr. Chandler saying, how are you going to tell people about what this means to them? We hope they come and experience, but those decisions are made at the Board of Mayor and Alderman level. When you're looking at capital projects and when you're allocating funds for certain projects, every one of those projects that I just mentioned were decisions that were made by this body before they even got to this step. We are executing those plans that you all have approved in the budget, and again, they add immensely to the quality of life. And as Paul mentioned earlier, absolutely is part of the strategic plan. And if you ask people in this community, why do they live here? It's for amenities like this, among public safety and education.
How much time do I have, man?
Well, you're over. Go ahead and ask one more question. Yeah, that'd be fine. But there'll be a second round.
Okay, great. So, Patrick, you mentioned that we used the bonds to retire the Germantown Athletic Club debt, and that is a question that was raised to me, is, you know, why aren't y'all using bonds? You know, if there is someone in the city who is elderly, for example, and they've paid into taxes, they may never get the use or the enjoyment out of this facility. And so it does raise a very valid question about whether or not we should extend the life of this debt with the use of bonds, or allow GPAC to take on that debt without requiring the taxpayers of the city of Germantown to do that. It seems to me like if GPAC takes on the debt, the users of the facility then are responsible for that debt, and we're not burdening those taxpayers who may never actually use the facility.
Well, two answers. I think it'd be very difficult for GPAC to get any kind of, as wonderful as a place it is, to get any type of credit rating in issuing bonds to complete the interior, because they are so dependent upon the city of Germantown, and you can't extend that type of long-range debt, whether it's 20 years, based upon pledges and contributions. That would never happen. The use of bonds now, or use of reserves for this project, if you look at our financial policies, the first option we should always look at, and was identified in the financial policies, is the use of reserves and not continuing to add debt to the city coffers and to future generations. That's the way this was budgeted in terms of funding, was per financial policies, look at cash and pay as you go first, and then as opposed to the, I hope I got these right, pay as you use, which would pass that long-term debt down to future generations. So we're following our financial policies in terms of using the $2 million, or actually the 2.5 now, in terms of funding, because we know we have at least a significant bond issue coming up probably in 2020 as it relates to the addition at Houston Middle School.
Alderman Owens or Yonda, would you like to have any discussion or questions before we go to round two?
Just a couple of comments. Paul, I think you and the GPAC board are to be commended for this public-private partnership that you and administration have put together. And I agree with you. Since this facility was opened, which was certainly prior to my time on the board, it's been an exciting time. But this, looking at this, and being a part of some of the events that we've held out here in the Grove, the Food Truck Festival, and some of the music that we experienced, I can tell you that I, over and over and over again, when I talk to residents, and primarily the demographic that I speak to are probably the soccer moms and my kids' age, kind of folks, but they are so excited to have a facility where they can gather, where they can experience music, entertainment that doesn't require them to drive across the city to the Shell to go, quite honestly, I don't think you can go anywhere east of Highland and listen to live music, and to have that in our backyard, that opportunity, and to be able to socialize in a casual setting. GPAC is great, but to have this type of venue, I think it'll be an unprecedented gathering place and present really a tremendous quality of life amenity for our residents. I do have some concerns about the rising costs that we've seen since the initial budgeting, but again, your ability to fundraise and bring these partners, these wonderful partners some are with us tonight, to the table, I think it speaks well to the future of this, and hopes we can get even more support from that type of community. So just those are my comments, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. I just need a little, out of curiosity, on the public-private partnership we have here, and where the GPAC is a 501c what? 3. See, it is a 501c3.
Yes, sir.
How does that, in a public-private, is that, I would think it would be some other category of nonprofit. Mr. Harris?
That's their IRS ruling. When they were granted a 501c3, and they looked at their incorporation papers years and years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, the IRS designated them as a 501c3 based on their mission statement.
That's correct, but you really have a situation where you have a public-public partnership, because the operation of a 501c3 charitable organization is a public entity of itself. And those contributors to GPAC receive tax benefits for making those contributions if they're individuals. Corporations are in different categories. But the actual structure of it is more public-public than public-private.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Alderman Massey.
Mr. Chandler, first of all, I would have stepped back and tell you, I said I live nearby. My wife is very excited about the project. I mean, if it gets approved, it's something that we're going to use. So I think what Alderman Owens said is correct. People my age and younger will probably use this, but there are those in the community who deserve to have their voice heard, and so some of my questions tonight reflect questions that I get from those people. My real concern is whether or not it's financially responsible for us to spend $5 million on the project, and you know I've had reluctance about the amount of money we were spending on this from the beginning. I've always enjoyed going to the area we refer to as the Grove, even without a stage. And so do we really need a $5 million stage? I personally think we probably don't. I don't think that we need to spend this amount of money. You and I talked about the fact that we just passed a 21-cent tax increase, and now we're spending it on things like the outdoor venue. And there are a lot of people in the community that are uncomfortable with that, and I'm one of them. But I do think that having outdoor events there is a lot of fun, so I want us to continue doing that. But from my perspective, coming back now and asking for an additional $500,000, right now I think it's unclear whether those costs are going to rise. You don't seem to know what we're going to do with the fence, which was previously called the architectural, what was it called?
Screen.
Architectural screen. And so we don't know if those costs are going to go up. Now we're talking about putting barriers out. So I presume that we may see these costs rise even beyond the $5 million that we're talking about tonight. And so I agree with what the citizen said earlier. Mr. Stahl said that we need to take a step back. I think we need to really look at your plans at this point and get a handle on what these final costs are going to be and whether or not this is something that is prudent for the taxpayers of Germantown. Patrick, earlier we were talking about whether or not the bond should be used for something like this. But I guess the other question I've gotten is, well, why didn't the city just make a loan to GPAC and allow them to pay the city back over time? So would you like to respond?
Make a loan to GPAC for the $2 million or the $5 million?
Well, rather than paying the $2.5 million as a city, why didn't the city of Germantown loan GPAC that money so that the proceeds that are used from things like ticket sales and the rental of the venue go back into our general fund?
Yeah, Alderman Massey, I really don't think we can do that. GPAC is not in a position to manage this type of project. As talented as Mr. Chandler is, the city staff is more equipped to do that, and the city, I don't believe, can make a loan like that to a 501c3 organization for that small amount of money or for that amount of money. I don't think it's allowed to be able to do that. The foundation will be, as the agenda item states tonight, will be providing $400,000 this evening, and by the end of the fiscal year, we'll provide another 1.6. Paul, is that correct? 1.6 to move this project forward. But we can't. The government can't loan this 501c3 those dollars.
And at this time, I'm certain, if I could, speak on the board's behalf. Granted, we had an arrangement for splitting the $4 million. To go back to them at this time, in lieu or in light of additional expenses, their participation was, well, our support is so excited, we've gotten to $2.5 million. And go back to them at this time and tell them to restructure the deal would not be advisable, as, and this is coming from myself, who carefully manages a very supportive and influential board of directors, which is a different model than we're commonly used to in this environment.
Yeah, it puts you in a tough position, Mr. Chandler. I understand that. If I had to be the one that went to that board and made that proposition, I would be willing to do that. The other question that we have is about the additional costs that we're going to incur as a result of the Grove's operations. So we haven't really talked about whether or not it's prudent then, we pay this money, whether it's prudent then to also have the city pick up those additional costs. You know, I just think we should visit whether or not some of those costs should remain with GPAC rather than being picked up by the city of Germantown. If you make a good case for it, you know, the public may very well get on board with it, but I think it's a discussion that we should have had and we should have going forward. So, you know, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this vote until we have an opportunity to review some of these details. I think that's fair to the public. I think it's fair to you, and so that's my motion.
There's a motion on the table. Could you give a date? Because it'll be finite if, or not, it'll be just arbitrary.
Well, it's really going to depend on how long it's going to take your staff to put the information together. So I will defer to you as to a time frame for them to put that together.
It's your motion, so choose a time frame.
How long will it take your staff to put the information together?
90 days.
Sure. It coincides with the, you know, the budget process that we go through as we go to plan FY20. We will, you know, we put our numbers together in the January, February, March timeframe.
There's a motion to...
Mayor, if I could add, also keep in mind that these bids are only good for a certain amount of time, and I want to say 60 days on this. So
60 days.
We are at least 30 days into the process, and after that point, we will have to rebid the project. And then let me add one other thing. Not to the exact detail, but when any capital project comes forward for the board's consideration, we also look at the operating costs associated with that. What are going to be the long-term ongoing operating costs? So many of the things that Paul's identified, though not specific, we've incorporated into the 5-year financial plan those additional staff members, and of course, when the $2 million project was brought up in the first place, the funding for that was included in the capital budget as well. But we also try to, as best we can, when a department head submits capital budgets, we also ask them to look at, okay, what are the long-term operating costs associated with that? Now, there may be some additional, but for the most part, I think we've captured those.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table to defer this item for 90 days. Is there a second? Is there a second on the motion? The motion fails with no second. You've got about a minute left on the floor. Alderman Massey.
Mr. Chandler, I appreciate you answering my questions and having a discussion with me. I think that the money will be approved tonight. I'll be a no, but I and my family will support you by attending the events and look forward to some very good shows. And again, just thank you for taking the time to have a civil conversation with me about this. I think the public will appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Yonda.
Yes. Paul, I think actually I'd like to make a comment. Laying down the criteria that all citizens use the amenities or the services that we have or offer and we spend money on would probably leave us with none. Even when we were doing our schools, I had people saying, well, I don't have anybody going to school. Why should I have to pay for that? Obviously, that's been a tremendous asset to our community. I believe that all citizens can use any of our services or amenities, and that's good enough for me, and that's GPAC is one of those amenities. Some of the criteria that we've talked about could be used for Parks and Rec. I mean, that's costs several $1 million a year also. But my question for you is, we're only talking about 400 people initially. Do we have traffic problems when we have GPAC? I've been there. I haven't been participating in any traffic problems because we typically have police there. GPAC seats over 800, I believe.
854.
So have we had complaints about traffic issues then on that, or just parking issues?
Parking.
Yeah, okay. You don't foresee that we'd have, with a smaller venue, traffic issues. Is that correct?
I'm no traffic expert, but we do talk with economic development and looking at the area around us and what we can do. We speak frequently with the athletic club and the Great Hall. When Thornwood comes online, we'll see what effect that has in terms of the additional spaces that they added in order to hope that GPAC Athletic Club and Grove visitors will park there, enjoy their stores and restaurants, and then walk over. And we are seeing a significant rise in the Uber Lyft system as it relates to our facility. Having been involved for 24 years, it's always something, because, in this day and age, a lot of people want to drive up to the front door and get out. And that's not always the case. But I will say we have adapted and planned when we know something's large. And in conclusion, we can have an event at the Great Hall, a fairly busy day at the athletic club, and a full house at GPAC, and folks get in. And sometimes up on that south side at the top of the hill, there's empty spaces because nobody wanted to go up that far. And that's just that's the way it goes. We will work with GPD. Of course, we want to improve the signage, ingress and egress as it relates to cars.
Also, I'd like to mention, I think that when I had a conversation with you a year or so ago, we were talking almost $100,000 with benefits for the employees. I don't visualize 90, 80. That's fine, but I always, it's always going to. If we plan anything, we can plan that things aren't going to go according to plan. But I think that we discussed utilities being less than $10,000. I don't think we're anywhere close to 80.
I wish I had it here,
okay, then,
Alderman. I just don't.
And then we also were talking about additional land things like True Green and stuff like that. But I don't visualize an issue in the FY20 budget of this thing being more than $250,000. Does that ring a bell with you? I mean, that's with us being high on
You have a
everything.
great memory.
Yeah, okay. Well, I believe that's the case, and I think we can probably make it less,
Sure.
just because it's outside and it's not being used all the time. You don't have to sit there and do the air conditioning and the heat all day when there's not being used. But that would be part of FY20. I would like for you to get that information, the guesstimates that we had to us. That'd be good, but I am in full support of this, and I look forward to when it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? It's been motioned and properly seconded. Please call the roll.
Mayor, are we voting on my motion to postpone? It wasn't second. You're right.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
No.
We look forward to the Grove opening. Just as a bit of reflection, just a few 6 or 8 years ago, I know a couple of the aldermen on the board can remember a group that wanted an outdoor performance venue, an amphitheater that came with no plan, no fundraising, demands, 3.2 or $6 million, and thank goodness we could have used you, Alderman Massey, then, because this board or some of these board members were pretty strident in not approving that. But this one, you've raised more than half the money, so we were very happy and very excited. We've reached the conclusion of our meeting this evening. I want to thank our reserve officers, Steve, George, Eric, and Al. Happy holidays.